What's going on, my comic chat army? We're here with Tim Howler Mouse from YouTube. I've met him a couple years ago and been watching his YouTube videos ever since. So we finally got him on the channel to interview him. How you doing, Howler Mouse?
Hey, I'm all right. How are you?
Doing pretty good.
After the last hour, I feel like we're old friends now, you know.
Right. We've had a lot of technical difficulty to bring y'all this interview. So, ready to jump into it?
Oh yeah, man. Let's do this.
All right. How did you get into comic books?
You might like watch my channel and stuff. I've been doing this for a while, and I've told that story where I think I have it down to like a bullet point thing. But basically, if you watch that '70s show, just sticking a little blonde-haired little 4-year-old kid in there, and it's exactly what it was. And I had a stepdad. I had an uncle. They were, I don't know, maybe a few years apart and all this stuff. They were all real young and stuff. And this stuff was just in the house. I mean, if you have a TV and a radio in the house, that's how this stuff was. They didn't have comic book boxes and stuff like that. This stuff was like in bags. There was comic books. There were pulp novels. There were Conan magazines. I've actually got some of the original stuff. So this stuff was just laying around. So back then, you know, you had 3 channels on TV. Everybody went outside, but you had those rainy days or days you couldn't go in where this stuff just blew me away. I was just sitting there reading this stuff. So, you know, it was just always in the house. And I think I was like about 4 when I picked up my first comic book, right? And I actually have some of those comic books and stuff. Kept some of the stepdad's collection and whatever over the years. Like, here's one of the first Iron Man stories I remember reading. So over the years, I picked up the upgrade, you know, and they're titled, you know, the dates are on them. Like, so this was like, it came out in '76. It was probably around '77. I would just have all this stuff in the house. And I think when I was 6 years old in 1979, the stepdad and we were all like riding around, and he took us to this place called Magic Mart. And we didn't go inside. I was flipping out. I thought I was going to get a toy. He goes in the back where they throw out the trash and stuff. And we had a spinner rack. So we lived in a trailer, and in his room, he had all these posters of Kiss plastered on the walls. And we had a spinner rack. And then he put his comic books that he was able to get back in there. So I was reading stuff. I was reading Silver Age stuff. X-Men #3, Jack Kirby, Fantastic Four. Horror comics, stuff like this that was around. I could just go in there and get a stack. And of course, we had like Heavy Metal magazine, Monster magazine, which was a comedy thing, Savage Tales. I remember all this stuff, and I just kind of stuck with it. I'd keep, let's see here. So I would keep change in a jar because, like, you understand, it was a different time, a different era, but everybody would party. I'd go to bed at 9 o'clock. Everybody, all their friends would stick around, listen to 8-tracks and vinyl records and stuff. I'd get up the next morning. There'd be people sleeping everywhere, if not passed out in a bathtub. So I'd go through the laundry, their pockets while they were knocked out, and everything like that. And I would just get change and collect change. So I would get trading cards, Kiss trading cards, Superman the movie trading cards, whatever. Bubblegum candy, and eventually got my first comic book in when I was 6 with my money, which was this. And it's really wild because where this is like a Whitman variant, these came in 3 packs, 3 for $1 back then or something like that.
Wow.
So when I went to the Raven Drug Store, the only thing I could figure out is that guy would open these up and make a quarter more for selling them separate out of the pack, you know, whatever he was doing. So yeah, to me, it was never really any different. That's the difference between me and a lot of collectors, I think, where I was so young and this was all over the house, and all I had to do was just pick a stack and sit down. You know, that's it. Just stuck with it over the years.
All right. Who's your favorite character?
Oh man, that could change daily, but the stable ones are probably like Commandy. James Robinson, Tony Harris's Starman. Starman was interesting because I got the first 6 issues. It was actually in a grocery store back then. And I thought it was so slow paced, I really kind of gave up on it. And then it was not on the stands. I think a year or 2 went by, whatever, and I had friends saying I needed to get that book because not only in the '90s did I look like that character, but when I got in there and started getting some back issues and picking back up on it and stuff. There were a lot of similarities where I was like, somebody owes me money. It was really wild. There's a movie called High Fidelity with John Cusack. It's almost the same thing. I had that black jacket and stuff. So it's really odd to see that book and that movie, and I'm like, somebody owes me money. Oh, you know.
Right? Do you only read comic books about superheroes?
Oh no, man! I've always read all sorts of things. I was a ferocious reader growing up. You know, you had troll books in school. I worked in schools for 5 years. I remember they would have book fairs, but I remember the troll books where you could order stuff. I'd get Choose Your Own Adventure. There used to be all these Where the Wild Things Are, extra merchandise you can get. Dr. Seuss, and then I started reading like Michael Moorcock, Elric, horror books. I didn't really get into the indie books like I wished I could of the 80s because they weren't accessible. But when you did get some of them, indie books, they were called alternative comics back then. They actually felt like you were reading something taboo. You didn't have the words, but you read them, and you feel like you had to kind of hide them a little bit because they did have like realistic violence. They had sexual overtones, mature things. And in my opinion, a lot of them were exactly reading that kind of flowed. You know what I mean? Everybody wanted to have their X-Men, so they would just insert something so that'd be an alternative comic. So no, I've always read all sorts of things. My biggest thing was I would read teen books so I could like get more bang for my money. You got more superheroes in a teen book. Justice League, All-Star Squadron, Teen Titans every now and then. I'd always get things with a bunch of heroes in them for my money.
What creator or writer you would like to see do a new take on a hero?
My thing is you know, I've had the same answer for years, and it's never going to happen. So I kind of get stuck on that stuff. But I would have loved to seen Alan Moore and maybe somebody like Rick Vipes or Steve Bissett, the guys who basically the people who did Swamp Thing with Alan Moore. I'd love to see them get a hold of the Fantastic Four.
Oh wow!
Alan Moore, you know, he grew up on the Silver Age comics. He's a Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko fan. I've heard his opinion on Stan Lee after meeting him and stuff, but Alan Moore always is able to, he takes his source material serious. So to me, I think his opinion would be what he does with as much books as he can. He moves forward with them. He doesn't try to rehash the past. The past is there. He'll draw from it, but he moves everything forward like he did in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Right.
He took all those characters from old novels and stuff, but he moved them forward, which is why he felt like it was all right to do that. And I feel like that's what he would do with the Fantastic Four. Everybody tries to go back to their retro pop art roots and stuff. And I've thought about this a lot. You know, yeah.
All right. Well, you touched on this a little bit. How long have you been collecting?
Since I consider myself since 1977. But I actually remember in 1982 getting the Justice League All-Star Squadron crossover for you old school guys out there and stuff. And when I started looking around my room and saw the stacks of books of stuff that I had bought and I had gotten, I think I actually thought I was collecting these now. I remember having that thought where it just dawned on me, like I'm moving this stuff around all the time. Comic books was just a part of everything I did as a kid. You know what I mean? It had its own little corner. You know, culture's turned to where you want to eat, everybody to validate themselves or whatever's going on. They want to act like they eat, breathe, and sleep and everything. Comics. Back then, it was just something that you went in that little world. It was awesome. You get inspired, but you go outside and play. And you had Saturday morning cartoons and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, so that's what I'm saying. I was probably about 9 years old when I considered myself a collector.
All right. And could you tell us the best way to store your books or the way that you store them? Do you display any of them like I do? Like I put some of them on the wall. I got like my slabs behind me.
Oh, well, when it comes to stuff like that, I think you just need to get a whole bunch of options and figure out what works for you and what you enjoy and stuff. I've done the thing where I had the posters up. I'd have the comic book framed up. I do this and do that. I played around with it for years. The best thing to do is, I mean, if you're really, I'm a little different. I have stuff since I was a kid that I'm probably going to get buried with. So I do the short boxes. I push people to get short boxes because they're easier to store. you know, it's easier to access your stuff. I was all for the long buck, you know, getting more bang for my buck and stuff to get the big stuff. But 65 degrees in a room, dry, cool room, if you can do it. Keep an eye on your bags for when they get oily, you know. Just be careful with, you know, and if you're displaying your comics and stuff, just play around with it with whatever makes you happy. You know, just realize that if you have it near a window, you know, you're going to get some discoloration and stuff. So think, you know, care versus display are two different things.
Okay.
Yeah. But right now I always try to keep a room to keep everything in.
All right. How did you get the nickname Howler Mouse?
Well, there's actually a video years ago where I tried to explain it, but I'll bullet point it. But I'm one of those guys that I worked in a group home, and I was a young guy who would take every shift available. So I got like a night shift, 11 to 7. So while it was a 15-bed group home with clients living there, at night they'd have chores for you to do on a schedule, and it was my night to strip and wax the floor and stuff at like 2 in the morning and stuff, right? So I was doing that, but they had the old school dishes. This is probably like around 1994, 95 or something. And so you would never know what was on the satellite. So I'd play around just to find some noise, and you had to be careful because you didn't want to wake people up. There was a National Geographic on. The National Geographic was showing this mouse. It looked like a little field mouse, and it was running through the desert at night, and it was jumping on the backs of scorpions and tarantulas and stuff, and then it would eat them. It was a meat eater. It had the behaviors of a wolf, and it would get on a rock and actually squeak on the moon. You can find it on YouTube. I actually used it as my intro there for a while when I still would edit videos. But the thing about it is, this is pre-internet days, and I could have swore they said it was a howling mouse, you know. So for years I would try to find, you know, I'd go to the library at the college and try to find the zoology section, and I kept trying to find this mouse. I started telling people about it because I was getting obsessed with finding it, and they thought it was the coolest thing ever. And we never really found it. And people eventually, you know, that's the guy talking about the howling mouse. This is the dude I was talking to you about. And it just morphed into a Howler Mouse over a few months, and people just started calling me Howler.
Right.
So I had the nickname since then. Internet comes along, it's dial up, and I found a few message boards, and it turned out it's called a grasshopper mouse. So this is like 3 or 4 years after me, you know, trying to track it down. And then I would have people walk up to me, small town, small county, and there were people still looking for it. So I kept my mouth shut because they had become really obsessed with it, wanting to know if I'd found out what it was. And I was in an awkward spot, like, this guy spent years. Do I tell him? I was too honest. I didn't think about lying and saying I just found out. So people called me Howler Mouse. And then there was a night where, I won't get into that, but it really stuck. There was a night where I was actually I was that guy that had the apartment, and I would have 5 or 6 people always there, passing out wherever on the couches, whatever, we'd be doing stupid stuff. And there was a night where a cat ended up getting its wet nose on my taint area, and I screamed like a little bitch. That's when it really did it. I was the cat, the mouse, the howling, me screaming. That's when it went everywhere. Right. because now we had social media starting up and internet and texting and stuff, so it got out everywhere. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any other nicknames that you want to tell us about, or just how?
Nah, man. Right. Nah, I'm good. Some of them are kind of racy from back in the day, you know.
I got you. All right.
Yeah.
Do you think the comic book movies changed comic books any?
I can see the influence and stuff, and you know, there's always this perception going back to like the Batman movie, the Tim Burton Batman movie. So, you know, I think you're going to see when you ask me questions like that, I end up going back in my head and stuff, right? But Batman was everywhere. The Tim Burton Batman movie to me actually helped the Batman comics, and I think we were expecting that with the Marvel movies. And I saw a bunch of influences. I saw, you know, Hawkeye get changed according to the movie and things like that. And we're in a situation where Disney owns Marvel. So you don't know what's influencing what. Were they planning on doing this anyway to change the characters to meet the movies and stuff? But I think what has happened in the long run is that the reason comic books haven't really took off because of the Marvel movies is because you have people who are fans of the movies, they're movie fans, and then you still have your comic book fans. Of course, there's probably crossover. So I'm going to say no, actually. I think if anything, it might have hurt them,
Okay.
A little bit. I don't think Marvel, on the other hand, I don't think Marvel ever fully took advantage in their head that you have free advertising here. I never really saw them do anything to me that really, went for it. We got a movie coming out. Let's get these books ready, see what we can do.
Right.
I said, no, I don't think they did.
All right. And what titles are you currently reading? We talked a little bit before the interview. You said you don't have any newer weekly pull. So is there any series you're following or anything?
Well, I thought about it since you asked that. There is one book I pre-ordered to take a chance on because it seems like, to me, it's a retro thing. I about flipped out when I realized that it was almost 20 years ago that a series called Earth X came out from Marvel. They're supposedly having like this, I don't know what it is, a 5-6 issue miniseries by that team. I don't think they got John Paul Leon on it, the guy who originally did it, but there's a prequel series I'm checking out. That actually is the only real new comics I'm getting. Grant Morrison's Black Stars is wrapping up. I've got that. I followed it's Grant Morrison, so I gave it a shot.
Right.
But that's really about it. I'm getting back issues. I'm getting on eBay, getting these things I've always sort of wanted to read. And I picked these up on my travels last 3 or 4 days. I'm just sort of filling in gaps and picking up things I couldn't buy back then for $1. So a lot of people I know in real life were just doing back issues and stuff right now.
How did how long have you been doing YouTube?
I want to say since maybe 2011. Yeah, a few breaks here and there. The channel actually did get big, I guess, there for maybe a year or two in the early 2000s. But for various reasons, I sort of backed up and took breaks. A lot of stuff behind the scenes and stuff. But yeah, I feel like a dinosaur here. And every now and then at a comic book convention, like I met Comic Uno. But there's a lot of us that I'm surprised how long we've been around. And I kind of consider us the OG comic book YouTubers and stuff, right? I sort of came in at an unusual spot. I was the one guy that came in with the first generation with Captain Cummings, Cacti 88, CTC Spirit, a bunch of these guys I can ask right before the second wave came in. I think we're like on the 5th wave, and it's completely different than what it used to be.
Oh, yeah. That's my next question. How do you feel about this kid-friendly YouTube?
I think it's a YouTube problem, not a creator problem, even though they're trying to push it on us. And that's one of the reasons I've been doing them. We've moved in this house, so I have a room with 0 lighting. They've got like this little ceiling fan with teeny tiny light bulbs. I haven't really figured out what to do. I don't want to order anything online. So between that and the Koopa thing, I've sort of been making sure there's nothing in my background because I'm waiting to see how it goes. I just about got rid of my channel. Well, I didn't know what I've started downloading some videos and was going to re-upload. And I've gone back and forth on it. So I think time is going to tell on that. I've had one video demonetized and I just haven't really got around to check why they did it, but I think it has something to do with Koopa. I think we're about to see in the next few months how it really is going to affect us. Like I said, it's a YouTube problem. And if it's, they got in trouble, they paid the money, the $175 million or whatever, yet they can't clearly tell us what we're supposed to do and not do. That's why it's still a YouTube problem.
Okay.
I don't care what they say. Yeah.
If you could have the ultimate showdown between 2 characters, who would it be and why? It doesn't have to be heroes, just 2 people.
Oh, no. It'd be Black Adam versus Booster Gold so I can see Booster Gold get his ass handed to him.
All right.
I mean, if I'm gonna have, a lot of people want that Clash of the Titans and the Ultimate Fight and all this stuff, and I'm like, I'm just gonna set them up to get killed,
Right. So, is there any more upcoming titles that you're looking forward to besides the one that you mentioned earlier?
That is a good question. Give me a second here. I'm trying to think if there's anything that's really got me pumped. At this very moment, probably not. but I do want to check out these absolute editions of Swamp Thing that's coming out. I'm down to where I know they're pulling from history, and there's a lot of stuff going on with the trades and stuff with DC saying that they haven't really performed the way they wanted. But Swamp Thing to me was always that book where the art was so ahead of what they could do with the coloring and the pulp paper and all that stuff that I want to check those out to see if it's caught up with what they can do. I've heard mixed results about bleeding out some of the art and stuff. I'm now like, it's kind of like I'm at a place now to where it's like I can't just laugh at a joke. I want to break down what made the joke funny. That's how it is that I am with comics. Like, let's revisit these great series and see if we can't make them better with what we can do today. Because you know, a lot of people say we're in one of the best times to collect comics. You know, so
I'd say they're coming out with too many variant covers. Like it's just too many. Like I don't know if you could see it up there. Marvel. What is it, 1000 or something? They came out with like 8, 9, probably even more than that covers.
Well, I can get my cane. I can get my cane and start shaking it, but the biggest problem, yeah, I followed a lot of that stuff online before it came out, but there's not a lot of substance to these books today. I mean, you talk about throwaway stories. I've had several talks where people pointed out, and it wasn't my idea. It's like as they were telling me about people collect the variant covers and they're in for it and stuff, it was that led me to saying like it's more like people buying. It's like giant trading cards than it is the comics.
Right.
There's a lot of people don't read their comics. I've tried to read some of the newer comics that came out, and there's been a few things I could not get through. So to me, there's some substance missing on the inside, some magic missing, you know. So yeah, I think it's there's a market for people who want the covers. They want to get it slabbed. They want the CGC thing. And you can't really put them down. You know, this is their thing.
Right.
This sounds like it would hurt comics, but actually, you know, it's keeping a market out there. You know, anything that can help. So yeah, I agree. That's not my way of collecting. I don't understand getting giant trading cards.
Right.
With their stuff inside.
What character do you think deserves a movie?
Oh man. I think if it was done by the right people, I mean, it seems like I always go Kirby, man, but I'm sure I could pull up some, you know, more obscure character that might deserve a cartoon. Black Adam's getting his movie. You have no idea how, when I found a Saturday morning cartoon on a Saturday morning show called Hero High, they had these little Filmation Captain Marvel movies. I actually have the VHS tape of those cartoons.
Wow.
Black Adam would be my first answer, and it's happened. It's happening. Now I'm going back to a book called OMAC, because with the political scene that's going on, it's one of the few things that's really set up where you don't have to shoehorn all this stressful stuff that's been relevant, you know, around all these days. OMAC by Jack Kirby is originally his idea that he didn't give to Marvel. He held on to it, took it to DC. And then when he had contractual obligations to put out 15 pages a month, that's why one of the reasons the book only lasted 8 issues. It was the Captain America of the future is what OMAC was supposed to be. And it dealt with economic issues and working class people and stuff like that. It's already got stuff in there with OMAC just beating everybody's ass through it, high action and stuff. But the settings were like, you know, a guy rented out a whole town and emptied it just to go after OMAC. So it's about rich and poor and stuff. And this is in the 70s. So I think OMAC, if somebody took it serious, like Ridley Scott gave it like somebody did like something like Blade Runner or something, you know what I mean? It's got to be a serious setting. And because the dude's got a mohawk, which is supposed to be like a God of War type thing. Nowadays, people would go straight cyberpunk, and it's not cyberpunk.
Right. All right. What was your thoughts on the Infinity War movies?
Oh, the first one was a film. The first one, I mean, I'm going to get, you know, if you're not into comic books and stuff, and you just casually went and watched that movie, you missed out on a whole other experience, because to me, it justified collecting comic books. To me, that was the peak of comic books. What they did with Gamora and Thanos is what made that movie a film. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Right.
How they were handling it, taking it very serious, and all those unspoken moments through CGI character. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
It stunned me. And of course, all the stuff that's going on in the background, all these characters I never in the world thought I would see. And they actually made a movie. Now, Endgame is a completely different sort of movie. That one to me is the popcorn movie. But I'll watch the last, whatever it is, hour over and over and over where we have the hero's return, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, the Infinity War, I was stunned when I watched it. And I came home and it was one of the, you know, I just had all these years of comic book collecting. You know, I can talk about comic book collecting like my Vietnam sometimes. You know what I mean? You know, before all this stuff went mainstream, going way back. And to see that, to me, it just said that anybody that's collected since they were a kid and they hung into it with these movies coming up and you were here before all that, you won. You won this war that people didn't even know you were in, you know. All the judgment and people judging you and keeping this stuff kind of secret. I mean, you can add a lot of drama to it, make it sound more intense than it is. But it was always a thing, you know, collecting the comic books, and then here we are, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to me, that really justified a lot of old-time collectors like me.
All
that
right.
was our justification.
And in Age of Ultron, you've seen Captain America scoot Thor's hammer. Do you think he was worthy enough then and just didn't pick it up? Or do you think he did something in Infinity War to make him worthy?
No, it was foreshadowing. I mean, I'll go to bat on this one. It was foreshadowing. They were trying to they knew where they were going with this. I have the Thor comic book from the 80s where he picked it up. You know, I mean, I was able to find it again. I sold this whole run of Ron Friends and Tom DeFalco books to my brother with Captain America 330 to 350. You know, and anybody that knows that, this is that late 80s stuff. I sold them to my brother to make room, and I got other comics with what I sold them to. So I knew Captain America could do the hammer. They have pulled so much from the 60s and 70s and all these Marvel movies. I knew what they were doing. They were foreshadowing. They were making you want, for people who knew the comic books, they were making you want him to pick it up and wonder if they were going to go back into that. For anybody that's just into the movies, it's this saves them storytelling wise, because it just doesn't mean Cap picked it up out of nowhere. We had Thor saying, I knew it, and you have to go back to it. That's why I think these Marvel movies are, you know, thumbs up. That's why I'm not real hard on them and stuff. They hit the right spots, and for the storytelling, it's you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think DC will ever be the same caliber as Marvel?
Well, I hope they're not. One of the things that comic books has taught me is that anything that's in a comic book collection, and this is with music, you know, I watched MTV in the 80s, and I watched all these bands come out that went from Motley Crue to Poison to Warrant to Danger Danger. You know, the quality went down with the blonde-haired singer and all this stuff. Each band was just a copy of it. And like with your comic book collection, the trick to the comic book collection is a good variety. Marvel has their thing. Sony tried with the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Those were garbage. And that's because they were trying to be a Marvel movie. DC finally figured out to let their movies be their thing. You know what I mean? I think once they figure out the tone and the identity of what they're doing and just do their own thing, it'll be better. I think it's the worst thing in the world is to try to be a Marvel movie. I know there's a business side of it, and there's probably expectations they have to live to. But the Joker, to me, is the one that showed them we can do our own thing. Aquaman, Wonder Woman were steps in the right direction. For somebody like me to see an Aquaman movie make $1 billion, I'm just like, never would have. I would have. I'm sort of like, and I've been if you were on Super Friends, I'm a fan of yours, but to see that happen, that's what I was. When I saw the first Iron Man movie, I remember sitting there going, "They're doing it." They actually had the gray Iron Man walk out of that cave, and I'm like, "They're doing it." And then the movie went on, and I'm like, "This is so much better than it should be." So, yeah,
right.
I can go on.
We just got a couple more questions in this interview. Things like 3 more. Have you ever tried to make your own comic book character?
Oh yeah, I got tons of them from when I was a kid and stuff. That was the thing. I compare good comic books and bad. Okay, I compare it to like music, right? You can hear Kiss on the radio. This isn't my metaphor. I heard this somewhere and I'm like, that's perfect. There's no other way to put it. But you have like Kiss and you have the Ramones and punk and stuff, right? With Kiss, you know, a lot of people will go out and like maybe buy a guitar, learn a few chords, but they display it. They want to keep it all shiny and new. And then with punk and stuff, a lot of people would go see those shows, get some cheap stuff, teach yourself, and actually make bands. You know, and that's where your 90s music came from. You know,
Right.
seriously. Comic books are the same thing. You read somebody like Gold Key Comics, Dale Comics, where they're kind of bland and stuff. You just kind of read them and you put them in a bag and you save them. You might go get it. You read somebody like Kirby, George Perez, John Byrne, Steve Ditko, I can go on and on. It made you want to pick up a pencil because the characters were so cool and what they were doing with them. They really shone. And that's what would make you sit there and draw all this stuff. I think I actually have a sketch from 1982 where I had Batman in an all white outfit with a black goatee. You know what I mean? So, yeah,
Nice.
I've had tons of characters and stuff. Yeah.
All right, this is our final question. Do you think when people get blank covers like this and get just a random artist to draw them a one-of-a-kind cover, does it decrease the value of the comic, or do you think it raises the value of the comic?
Are you talking about the blank variants that are meant to be drawn on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like original art. It just happens to be on a comic book. You know, if I could get a Teen Titans #1 and get George Perez to draw a character on it, there's a piece of original art on a book. I think original arts has its audience and stuff. Time will tell on that one, but I think you can always find somebody that's going to buy that book or have value with it. I don't think you're going to find it like an Overstreet Comic Guide or Comic Book Realm or any of these places you can go to see the value of a book. I think I think it'd be more of a gallery piece than a comic book.
Okay.
So I think it's a good idea to have fun with it and stuff. I absolutely hated those things when they first came out. I'm like, what are they doing?
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, I've finally seen what you can do with it if you can pay the money to get somebody to do it.
All right. Well, that's the end of the interview. Howler Mouse, do you have any shout outs?
No, just thanks for having me on here, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for appreciate it, man.
And we're going to link Howler Mouse's YouTube channel down in the description so y'all can go check him out. Yeah, thank you for being on and thank you for the interview.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Had a good time.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.